This is the Depth Mystic Community Podcast, episode 11. So this theme I want to focus on is how idealism collides with reality, where the rubber meets the road. And the first instance of this collision that I want to talk about is why I was not able to produce an episode last week. I would apologize for missing an episode last week, except that being forced to miss an episode has made it clear to me that I need a tonal shift for the next bunch of episodes. We could call the initial energy, which powered the first 10 episodes, Yang energy, like in the Chinese philosophy of Yin and Yang. It's the masculine, bright, initial burst of excitement. But another aspect of my overall ministry arose 2 weeks ago after I finished the 10th episode. This is a darker yin energy, which has to do with how a project like the one I'm engaged in, both the podcast specifically and the greater ministry in general, collides with the earth, collides with reality. And I expect the exploration of this subject matter to have a different character. It might just involve my doing something like an audio diary and selecting the clips from it that are most podcast friendly. The best podcast I can do is probably something like that, because I have all sorts of thoughts that are probably worth hearing, but that I'm not able to easily structure into a unified episode every time. And so do I leave all these fragments unheard? Because the project I'm engaged in is so huge in its scope. I had to invent a new term just to describe the kind of project that I'm engaged in. The podcast purports to be oriented towards depth mysticism, which nobody's ever heard of, and I'm but one person doing it for the time being. So there has to be a mechanism by which I can actively surrender to the vastness of what it is that I'm trying to do, to give the listener an exposure to my authentic self, by not demanding that I have perfect focus and purpose for every episode, without demanding that it be perfectly packaged. Because I do want this to be a community podcast, and one of my core values is that I'm able to do it weekly. But that's going to mean that I'm not going to be able to package a single set of ideas perfectly every time. One of the goals here is to create a community, which means there has to be a sort of continual presence of this thing I call depth mysticism. But since I'm the primary representative of depth mysticism, I have to lower my standards a little bit and find a way to give people access to me as I am. Just being myself, thinking depth mystical thoughts. And all I really need to do is to capture enough depth mystic thoughts for that week to be stimulating. I have to forgo the idea that I can bring a profound new idea to the table every single time. Something about a ministry has to do with consistency. And I want to choose consistency over the highest possible quality. I'm focusing on community rather than pure education. I need to open up space in this podcast for it to be something like the week in the life of Zach, which is not intended to teach a lesson every time. I'm talking about Yang and Yin. Like Yang is purposeful, intentional teaching, you might say. Whereas Yin is just some depth mystic, basically being himself. Because I kind of need a little more community, and I suppose the downside is that the people who are there for the high-density learning and or entertainment experience may be a little bit disappointed because that kind of high-density teaching would take so much energy that I couldn't do anything other than focus on the podcast. And it was fun for the first 10 weeks, but a tonal shift is now in order. And so I might do a series of episodes, more yin, darker, casual, authentic in its non-directedness. Or I could skip weeks on occasion, like I just did, and wait until I have a distilled essence of something I really want to say. That would be the alternative. A Yang-focused podcast. The magnitude of the project that I am undertaking right now will definitely take the rest of my life. And any such project would have to have a way of proceeding that allowed for the space that anyone needs in order to basically be themselves and to grow while doing it. Of course, you need enough content to keep people interested. Content is what you call Yang energy. It's purposeful, conceptually directed. And Yin is sort of like who you actually are, where the intention crashes into the earth and the truth that results. And so maybe when I'm going to do one of these relaxed Yin, honest, but not quite as purposeful and directed episodes, I will use this new yin-sounding theme song that I just spent the last 2 weeks writing for my video game. But I don't want to leave you on such a dark note. If you want to comment on this podcast, there is a link to a Facebook group and a Discord server. I will see you next week.